Hello, hello. Welcome to Leap Taken. This is Mika. Here at Leap Taken, I talk about all things witchy, craft related, law of attraction, manifesting, esoteric, and everything else in between. So today, I want to talk about this topic of, well, what type of witch are you? This video is not going to be a list of all the types of witches you can be. I think there's a lot of those on YouTube. Honestly, you could probably just do a simple Google search and find out a lot. Everything from, like myself, cottage witch, eclectic witch, there's sea witches, there's art witches, there's all different type. And basically what that all means, the descriptive before the word witch, is basically sort of like your focus. But it does not mean that's all you do. So for the sea witch may not only work with the sea in all her spells, rituals, or any sort of magical workings that she'll do, or he or she does. Instead, or they do. Instead, it might be where it's the predominant thing. It's the most of the focus. It's typically their affinity, their intuitive skill, the thing that calls them, and I'll get more into that shortly. So yeah, so he or she, they may be doing mostly things working with water. So on the surface, if it's not, even if it is seawater, you just see someone working with water, you might think she's the elemental witch, which is a thing. An elemental witch, she just works more with the elements. Or water witches. There are water witches who specifically work with the water. So a sea witch might consider herself a water witch, but a water witch doesn't consider herself a sea witch. You kind of see which witch I'm talking about. But anyway, the point is, it's more about where your affinities are, where you're drawn to the most, where the majority of what you focus on and what you are willing to focus on, because there are witches who don't necessarily practice or currently are not practicing for a multitude of reasons, but it's just what sort of calls you. All right, so this is more about, this discussion I'm about to have is more about developing your skills to be able to trust yourself enough to know what type of witch you are. Because although that you can find tons of videos, like I said, that lists witches and, which one are you, like, and it's, to me, it's a very high level of approach. If you have no idea, you might not realize that what you've been doing all along is using the example of a sea witch or a water witch. You may have no idea about that, and that's okay. Those types of videos are very helpful, especially to those who maybe are newer to the craft or have been practicing a specific path under the pagan umbrella that they don't really, haven't thought too much more outside of their path. So, if you're interested in this, go ahead and stay in. And also, I should start just reminding you guys, if you enjoy these videos, please go ahead and like them. Subscribe, of course, if you haven't already. And please add a comment and let me know as well, especially if you've struggled with giving yourself a name. But I'll get, like, what type of witch you are. I'm coming to more on that topic as well. But here's a couple questions I would tell you to ask yourself. Do you like structure? And maybe some structure, but with more flexibility? You need to kind of ask yourself that type of question when you're thinking about a path. This is more than just what you're called to. So this is a thing of, because there are certain paths that you take, or I should say, types of witchcraft that you're doing that might require more structure. Which goes into the next thing. Is it important to be a part of a community, like a coven or an order? Because there are certain types to be that type of witch, you may need to be associated with a coven or a specific initiation, which would require you to be, in an order or something like that. Are you looking for a mix of both? You like the structure, the formality of rituals, things like that, but you ultimately like to do things mostly on your own. Maybe you only want to come together for rituals, like I said, sort of the big witchy events, the holidays, the Sabbats, and so forth, lunar cycles. So that's something you might want to ask yourself for if you just want to be solitary for the foreseeable future, which is perfectly fine. Lots of us have been that. and it's worked out fine on our journey. We were able to move at our own pace. And if you kind of felt like you, I don't want to say mess up, but let's just be honest, some of us look like, oh, I messed up. I didn't want to do this type of witchcraft. I wanted to do this kind. You don't have to answer to anybody other than yourself, your spirit guides, possibly ancestors and deities, of course, that you work with. Maybe you have to answer to them, but outside of that, you don't really have to explain yourself much to anyone else. So I just want to say, on this same kind of list of things you need to inquire for yourself, is also more of a suggestion about being open and honest about what you're called to. So I said that earlier. I would go more into detail about your calling for something. I felt a calling for the concept of being a sea witch at one point. I had been living in Florida for years, and I, wanted to tap into the energy of the beach, and we were going, and I just began to, like, one thought after another. It was just more of a, I don't know, I was kind of just, I concluded that, yeah, I could look into being a sea witch. I didn't see a lot of information on being a sea witch at the time. When I was checking on YouTube, I was looking for someone who identified that way. I was looking for books that talked about it, and I didn't see a whole lot. I even looked up for blogs, websites, and things like that, people who represent themselves as a sea witch. In books I read, fiction that focused on witchcraft or witches, I would some audio, but I would read things, and they would talk about being a sea witch. So that was intriguing, but I didn't have a whole lot more. So to be honest with you, eventually I just sort of dropped researching and looking into it further, and I didn't look at it anymore. Now, there are some people who would have the same journey I had in my short-lived sea witch journey. And, we would all say, well, I feel called to it. I don't know, it's something about it. So here's the thing. I did have a calling. I wanted to learn more about it. But overall, and only you can decide your path, I believe in fate. I believe in, intervention from, the divine and spirits and so forth. I do believe that's possible. But ultimately, you're setting the tone. You, your third eye, your conscious mind, your subconscious mind, your heart, your intuition, everything's all in your gut, so that you're making decisions in your life. And ultimately, all those things once aligned, it wasn't going to be the sea witch. It wasn't my path. That wasn't what I was supposed to be doing, at least at that time, or even obviously for me now. So calling, yes, but a calling to do what? Well, it was of interest to me, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I had an opportunity to do that. And that can be enough. So I caution you to learn to discern the difference between interests for the purposes of gaining more knowledge, understanding. I mean, we're wise folk, which is us, we're the wise ones. So taking the time to gain more knowledge, whatever media you choose to learn, whether it's video, movies, documentaries, or reading a fiction book as well, absorb all of that information, maybe write it down in your book of shadows, your grimoire, whatever magical journal you want, of all these different concepts. That's a good thing to have with groups, because you can maybe talk through some of it, even if it's just a good friend or two. Maybe you guys can kind of like book clubbish, you get a theme. I know my coven, we're talking about doing that exact same thing, sort of doing like a deep dive into a specific topic. Maybe for you, it could be to study different types of witchcraft. So put it in that file, so to speak, and, continue on your current path. Or you could just be eclectic. And if you feel that you're just kind of like eclectic, which is basically a little bit of everything. Some people are put off by that, I'm finding out, because they don't like the idea of someone taking a little bit of Wicca, a little bit of who, a little bit of that. They find it offensive. I represented myself as an eclectic witch for many, many years, clearly, and I don't find it offensive, and I don't think I ever will. I think it was just the right label to apply to myself at the time. Yeah, I was up for learning a little bit of everything and applying a little bit of everything to my magic to see where it fit in, what worked for me per spell, per ritual, per lunar cycle, per time of the day. It just depended on all those things. But I like having that option of having, all these different types of magic at my disposal to use. Enough about that. But just, again, I just encourage you to be open and honest with what you're called to do, because that's kind of a really big deal, by the way. um, Remember, you're only answering to yourself. I just kind of want to reiterate that that's your journey. I'm giving suggestions and tips and ideas to, again, help you tap into that. That basically your intuitiveness, your energy, what feels right. A lot of times, and yes, tangent alert, a lot of times we are told to basically run from our emotions and not really focus on those, as if, becoming so, there's such thing as too emotional, too much, emotion being displayed or exhibited. And, maybe that could be true. At the same time, okay, so it can't just be too much or none at all. And just, being a robot or attempting to try to act like one, which is impossible. So tap into that. When intuition and all of that sort of stuff, it's that feel-good stuff. It's that not feel-good stuff. It's the emotions. It's allowing that part of yourself to kind of come to the surface and guide you without guilt, without fear, and just, if it doesn't feel right, then don't go that path. Don't do it. If it stops feeling good or like the right thing for you, then stop. The only time I would tell you to analyze those feelings a little bit more is if you have known issues, and only you can be honest and answer this for yourself. If you know for a fact you have a habit of kind of starting looking into something the moment you feel challenged or just bored, you give up and you go to the next thing, but there's like a trend, so you're never really fully getting a well-rounded education on any particular topic. You're not fully reaching your potential in any given path. I'm speaking in witchcraft here exclusively, but it could be part of other life skills as well. But you're not basically ever really moving beyond your current skill level station. You're not, and it's been years, and you learn different things, but you never really progress to an advanced level in any particular path or any particular study. So yeah, if this is something that's part, and at some point that was me as well, so I can speak on this, then it's important for you to maybe do a little bit more analysis of yourself. Analysis, these are fancy words, shadow work. Start getting deeper, asking yourself. You are taking exclusive time to sit and ponder your own freaking thoughts and emotions. Like, you're really taking time out of the day. It's just for that purpose. That you can journal about it. You can use a voice recorder and speak your thoughts. The point is, you're asking yourself the question and you're answering yourself. And then you are taking the time to analyze your thoughts. In a sense, that's the basis of shadow work. Sometimes we get a little extra woo-woo, some of us witches, and we add on all this other stuff. But in essence, when you boil everything down, it's you asking yourself questions and answering them in all of the parts of yourself, your higher self, your lower self, whatever you, all of those selves, and all of because you're made up of so many things, all the roles you play, all that sort of stuff, starts to have a little inner dialogue about those answers and how they felt about the question. And then a general consensus is reached, and that kind of sets the tone for the next set of questions that you're going to ask yourself. So you kind of get a baseline of where you are on this subject matter. What's bothering you? Why is it bothering you? What's right? Why is it right? Why do you feel guilty about that being right? That sort of stuff. Anyway, I told you it was a tangent. So now I got that out of the way. My tangent, that is, yeah. But I'm a big proponent of narrative writing, and I basically, if you kind of tell me a little bit of a story and you're talking about, you know, technical subject matter, if you could break it down to an example of a story, I can understand it. So this is witchy technical matter. So I'll give my story. So I talked about being an eclectic witch. So that is something that I sort of held on to that label, that title for years, because I knew I was no longer Wiccan. At some point, I took a while to make that decision, but technically I knew I wasn't Wiccan for some time, even before I openly admitted that, or at least to myself. And after that, I didn't know what I was. I knew I was a witch and I was comfortable with that word. But as time went on, and we humans like to label, I was like, well, what kind of witch am I? I do like some of the things from Wicca. I do like some of the things from Hoodoo. I like some of the things that I'm learning about Nordic traditions. I like some of the things, and I'm like picking and picking. And, I like Greek mythology, but I really like, Egypt mythology and things like that. So like there's a little bit of this, a little bit of that. So ultimately, I started understanding more about being an eclectic witch. So, okay, boom, I'm an eclectic witch. That's what I went with. So, eclectic witch, that's what I went with. So, okay, I was happy with that decision, and I kind of let it stick for some time. So, I would say it was a few years ago, I decided that it wasn't really, I didn't have the term yet, the label, but I knew it wasn't just eclectic anymore. I wasn't, my magic, that is, my craft. It wasn't just eclectic. It was, but it wasn't, because I tend to have a singular focus with all this research that I've done, which, by the way, was important for me to dabble in this and dabble in that, the basis of being an eclectic witch, because I would need those skills and those talents and all that magic information that I picked up, because my focus was really about the home. And mentally, physically speaking, I was in a home all the time. Mentally, I almost always wanted to be in a safe, comforting space that is my home. And emotionally, I felt like it was starting to become a reciprocal thing. If I cleaned up right afterwards and I would sit down and chill out, that sense of overall well-being, one, the accomplishments of actually setting a goal of cleaning up your space and finishing it, emotionally speaking, that's awesome. But to take it a step further, it wasn't just that felt good too, but I almost felt like I was getting something else from the energy in the house. And I started to explore that a little bit more. And long story short, that would be the basis of me understanding about cottage witchery, at least the way that I practice it. And then I would understand that that's what you're doing, silly girl. that's what this has been leading up to. You're a cottage witch. I like the idea of a green witch or hedge witch. Those titles and all that comes with that was very appealing to me. I said, but that wasn't quite right either. I knew it wasn't kitchen witch, because I get in there, but it's not like my whole thing. So I was like, all right, what is my deal? Because I can feel that reciprocal energy in the home. I feel like there are house spirits, and they're interacting with me, but I don't feel like it's a negative vibe I'm getting from them. The energy doesn't feel negative at all. It kind of feels like they're just here and they're at my ready, so to speak, respectfully. Not to be taken advantage of, but they're part of the energy of the home has taken, a persona in several, basically. So, okay, I was willing to understand that and accept that and then experience it more. But that's my sort of going into cottage witchery. It wasn't in becoming a cottage witch. It all started with becoming eclectic. To become eclectic, I felt drawn, called to different paths and learning a little bit of everything. Before I got to that, it was Wicca. And with Wicca, I liked the structure. I like the formality that you could have, because Wicca could not be as formal, depends on how you practice, but I liked having those confounds of structure and sort of within reason a unified approach. Like, we all agree, if you're Wiccan, you understand the concept of the Wheel of the Year. You're okay with the threefold law. You could be Wiccan and not agree with all these things. Yes, please don't get me wrong. But at the same time, generally speaking, those are concepts found in Wicca, and people who are Wiccan generally follow those concepts and live that out as part of their spirituality, their faith, so to speak. Okay? So that was my path. It started, way back with the Wiccan thing, the Wiccan path that I was on. So that's where it started. And, what started from there was just listening to my higher self, listening to that little voice, sometimes a genuine, actual voice that I would hear, listening to it and being receptive and agreeing to what was spoken, to me. Those messages and things like that. So before, it was very rudimentary for me, my witchcraft. It wasn't, definitely wasn't defined even as witchcraft, but that's really what was happening. So it was like I was bit by bit, yes, being led, but actually taking the leaps myself into each journey, each path. That was me doing that. Me intentionally taking the leap. I was, called, I felt drawn, attracted to, but at the same time, there's a lot of things we're drawn, attracted to, and just never pursue. I took that leap. You see where I'm going with this? I took that leap, and yeah, that's how I got to be a cottage witch. So that's my path. It wasn't quick and easy. I didn't grow up in the age of internet like we have now in social media. So I felt like it was a little bit harder. And even once the internet existed and chat forums and all that sort of stuff existed, Real Talk, I didn't have access to that. I didn't have that kind of money. Not everybody. There was a huge technical divide, especially if you were a black family in America. There are some, obviously, who had the money and the funds to be able to afford a personal computer. And not everyone white had a personal computer. I understand that. I hate that I even have to stop and say this sort of stuff, but I realize there's some people out there who, they only hear in absolutes. But anyway, clearly that's not what I'm saying. But statistically, which, those are real facts and numbers, there was a technological divide. So I didn't really get onto computers the way that, any close way that we do now, until, dang, I want to say, my kids were me and my kids were using computers pretty much at the same time and learning. I had jobs, obviously we were doing computers, but in your house, a personal computer, I want to say 2003, I got my first computer for the house. I think it was 2003, maybe 2. I got to double, the dates. I'm trying to think. I think it was 3 years before I left New Jersey. I left New Jersey in 2005. So maybe 2002? So early 2000s really is when I personally had my own computer in my house. So that tells you a lot right there. I'm saying all this because I didn't have access to chat forums where people would talk about witchcraft and all that sort of stuff, because that's what it started with, chat, like a forum area. With AOL and all that sort of stuff. But then, we had websites and other things like that, and I didn't really tap into all of that. I didn't know, and it was people. It wasn't obviously a lot, but people were starting to build that sort of content. So it was going to be a longer path. Of course, now someone could watch this video, take what I'm saying to help them sort of fine tune all the information that they have access to, and say, you know what? At the end of the day, I knew I was eclectic, so yeah, I'm just going to refer to myself as an eclectic witch if anyone asks, that sort of thing. Because now it's so accessible to get that information, which is beautiful, by the way. Alright, so I just want to kind of conclude this video with this. Pick a path or not, just go with the eclectic umbrella, keep on your journey if that's where you are. If you've been doing that for a number of years and it works for you, awesome. I don't think that anyone should put themselves under any stress of labeling themselves something that they don't really feel, which is kind of like the same thing if you don't like labels. There's a witch that's been on YouTube for some while, and I saw a Facebook post she had. She was just talking about this, how she doesn't really call herself much of anything anymore other than, yeah, witch, but she doesn't really feel comfortable with any of the labels anymore. And I think she might have said if, the only thing left is maybe green witch. She thinks she still would just refer to herself that way and kind of, say, hey, I guess that's my witchy path, and I can understand that. After you've been practicing for some time, you kind of feel like, well, I was learning this, I was learning that, and I was practicing this way. It might not make any sense anymore, any of these labels. It just might not jive with you at all, and that's okay. That's part of the journey as well. I think for some of us, I really do. I feel really positive, and for the foreseeable future, with referring to myself as a cottage witch, I definitely feel like it's my path. So, but time will tell if it's something else, which is my next point. A witch remix. So, a witch path remix. A remix might be subtle for some of us. If you never really claimed any specific title, you're eclectic or cottage or whatever. If you never really claimed a specific title, this will be simple for you. It won't feel that difficult to just slip into being a water witch or whatever. However, if you kind of have been really definitive about what type of witchcraft you practice, but you feel this immense urge, call, like seriously divinely led to go more down the line of practicing being a hoodoo, let's go with that one. And up until this point, you have been definitely more eclectic with a heavy emphasis on Wicca. Let's say that's kind of what you've been doing for some years, but hoodoo is calling you. It's like that, getting into that type of workings is just really calling you, and you want to know more. So be it. Here's the thing, you could be doing that for a number of years, or just for a year, and maybe you want to go back to what you were doing before, but maybe you add in these other elements, and now you're just back to eclectic again. Who's going to stop you at your path, right? No one's going to tell you you're not allowed to do that. Oh, I thought you were this, I thought you were that. Here's where, full disclosure, I think that's going to be a problem. If you are somebody like myself, you're a YouTuber, or you create some sort of digital content, right, to be consumed by the masses, you're going to probably not want to keep changing your path every year. Here's why. For some people, that will appeal to them. Oh, she's like me. I do that. That's great. But for a lot of people, they won't like that. They won't want to follow somebody who seems like they're just jumping from one thing to the other, especially if you're speaking on your path as someone who's knowledgeable. That can have, negative consequences if that's what you're doing. But honestly, I wouldn't claim a label. I would just continue to work under that eclectic umbrella and saying, it's a year of studying fire, being a fire witch, a year of studying, being astrology witch or whatever. You can make your practice that way. Again, no one's stopping you. You can kind of approach this however you want. Okay, so the other thing, which is what I'm kind of alluding to, is sometimes we have experiences that come in seasons. We've all heard the thing, sometimes people are brought to you for a season, not a lifetime. And during your path, it's okay that you're practicing witch who does it this way for this part of your journey, and you don't pick that back up again. Like, seriously, it's no longer an issue for you. You're just not into that anymore. I know that sounds a little trite or whatever. I'm just not into it, but no, for lack of better words, you're just not called to it. It doesn't feed you anymore. Perfectly fine to take a break completely from witchcraft if you need to, until you feel a little bit more solid about what it is you want to do, how you want to practice. That take some time, figure that stuff out. You can still be reading about witchcraft stuff and partaking in, discussions on certain subjects, but you might not. You might, rituals, you don't do lunar rituals, you just kind of check out on personal practice for a bit and kind of just observe. That's fine. I would suggest doing that, especially if it's all getting way too confusing and you just don't know what you feel like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. You're, I don't want to say you're not supposed to be doing anything, because honestly, there are people who really do feel this thing, like they really feel like they're supposed to be doing this type of witchcraft, like it is part of their lineage, it worked for them, it balances them, by all means. But for others, some of us, you know what, I just think we have unique paths in that it doesn't work that way for everybody, and like that's okay, and you have to be okay with it. It's not about other people being respectful, because people are going to be people. You got to be okay with understanding that, like, you might not feel an intense calling to anything but other than just the umbrella that is witchcraft. You enjoy watching YouTube videos where people are discussing it, or they're showing you a magical spell or type of ritual they're doing. You might enjoy reading the witchy books, or reading fiction geared toward witchcraft or witches and things like that. And that can be fine too. Sometimes it's okay to just observe and consume, and maybe not be the maker, and maybe not be the practitioner, just for a bit of time. I'm not saying stay in that space, but it's okay sometimes to, take a passive approach to witchcraft. That's what I'm trying to say. Until you feel like you want to, or you need to, okay? And just kind of more, again, tapping more into speaking in examples. When I was living in Florida, that's where I really felt like tapping more into the water element, and like I said, being a sea witch, and really going more down that, being a lot more aware of weather patterns, and which led me to understand more about the goddess Oya, and to understand more about sea goddesses, and that as well, and like Orishas, because of the type of energy I was picking up. I definitely felt like we took a drive somewhere going more towards central Florida, and there were like old fields, they were active sugar fields, but those fields were worked at one time by the enslaved people. So, feeling that energy, I knew that before I knew that. Like, I felt it before I knew it. I remember on a car ride, and that happened several times. So, like, all that type of energy, spirits that are native into that area, I was picking up on all of that. And water was a prominent element in all those interactions. So, yeah, I definitely felt drawn to that at the time. Now, mind you, my sun sign is Aries. I don't have a lot of water in my chart, birth chart. I really don't. I mean, there's a little Scorpio and there's a little Cancer. So yeah, that is, yeah. I got a little bit of that in there too. But ultimately, I act like an Aries. I do. I really do act like an Aries. Water is not my thing. I don't swim. I don't know how to swim. I mean, in an emergency situation, I might be able to do enough to not completely drown, but that's something I just never really got to be really good at. So, I don't really like large bodies of water. They kind of give me a little bit of anxiety. I like the idea of the ocean, but if I think about it too long, I get like low-key anxiety. Or let me phrase that, if I'm on the water, that's when it kind of freaks me out, probably because I can't swim. So I'm bringing all this up because then when I moved here to Arizona, I think more about elemental magic. Yes, water, but because there's lack of, so I think of ways to bring in more water. But I also think more about like earth energy. I think more about sun energy, solar energy. I think more about working with crystals and those sort of elementals, earth and fire. Those are those are more prevalent in my where I live now, you know, my home in my area. So I think about that sort of stuff when I'm thinking about magic now. It's not that I don't care about, you know, the water elements and all that sort of stuff. Like but it doesn't fit this season of my life where I'm at, where I'm living in this environment. You see what I mean? So I give myself permission to do that. And I'm wrapping this video up with this idea because you can give yourself that permission, by the way, to change your magic based on your environment, based on the time of year, the season, your literal location. You know, you could live in, you know, I could live in Florida, but I had been more landlocked. I could have been like in Orlando or something. I wouldn't have had access to the ocean. So being in South Florida at the time and being so close to the beaches definitely left me with wanting to understand even more. And now I'm in this new environment and it makes me want to understand different things. And all this is not going to an empty place. Like, I'm not storing it in some, you know, mind library where everything gets dusty and it doesn't matter. No. I make all this part of my cottage witchery. Also, no matter where I'm at, I'm always the witch. I'm always a witch. I'm always me, Mika the witch. And to me, it makes me more adaptable to certain types of environments. So I don't feel like because I'm not near the shore, then I can't practice my magic. Or if I'm not, you know, in a place that's sunny all the time, I can't practice my magic. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good thing. But that's really all I have. Thanks for staying with me this long, if you have. I appreciate it. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you feel comfortable, what type of witch you are, and a little bit about your journey. If you want to write that out, I'd appreciate it. But yeah, that's the end of the video. So thanks again for watching. I'm Mika. This is Leap Taken. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. Thanks again for watching. And as always, if you've subscribed, I really appreciate it. And again, thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.